if you make your targeting so powerful, there's no reason why you're not going to, lift your response rates. We had a great customer. One of my best references from a customer said, we grew our business by 50% and we sent 30% less communications. Right? So sending 30% less and growing 50% more.
Bem-vindo ao MarTech Talks, o podcast da Liminal que lhe traz entrevistas aos líderes de negócio que estão na linha da frente da transformação digital de departamentos de marketing e vendas para que também o seu negócio possa crescer nesta nova era tecnológica. Enquanto especialista em MarTech, a Liminal tem vindo a conseguir melhorar os resultados de marketing e vendas de várias empresas, assegurando as condições para o sucesso dos negócios na nova era digital. Com a Liminal, terá acesso a peritos que farão a análise, desenho e implementação de estratégias e operações de marketing e vendas. Tudo isto suportado por sistemas tecnológicos tais como CRM, automação e analítica de marketing. Crie o seu ecossistema digital de negócios com a Liminal.
Hello and welcome to MarTech Talks by Liminal. Today we'll explore what it really takes to build growth on top of customer intelligence and where trust fits into that equation. Our guest is Mike Blanchard, Vice President of Customer Intelligence at SES. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Tiago. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Such a pleasure having you also, Mike. Thank you so much for your time. Mike has more than 2 decades of experience across CRM, data, marketing technology as a whole. He has worked closely with leading brands at the intersection of analytics, AI, customer experience. Mike is the one to help companies to move from fragmented data to connected data-driven journeys. And obviously, this has to mean more business and better relationships with customers, of course. Mike, recently you shared a story. I found that very funny. When somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? And instead of saying, I work in software, you said, I work in the business of trust. So, and this is a strong statement. We know that in reality, most companies still optimize for conversion and revenue. So where does the business of trust actually conflict with the business of growth?
Oh, what a great question, Tiago. And I can see you've been following my LinkedIn posts because
that's it.
That particular story still drives me crazy now because and just for your listeners, I'm developing a house in the UK. I'm building a very old, modernizing a very old house here in the UK, and as part of that, I had some build work done in my garden, and I was incredibly let down by some builders, and it's just it just brings home the most frustrating thing is about people doing what they say they're going to do, and not lying to you or not pushing you away or finding excuses, and it just with everything that I do, I try and I meet lots of our customers, and some of these projects are challenging. We all work in this market. It's there are some fantastic opportunities and use cases. There are some hairy challenges that we confront on the way. But I, try and just be the reliable kind of voice of saying, look, this is something that either we'll take away and get better at, or, we'll investigate with you as our kind of partner on this journey together. And I think it's, I think as just as a way of working, you've got to have those foundations in place, particularly in the business to business space. Despite all this world of AI, people want to trust the people they're doing business with. But actually, I was going to pick you when you put this in your I didn't realize you were going to go with that story, which I found interesting. But when you put it in your notes to me, it sort of reminded me about I don't know if you had it in Portugal. There was an experiment many years. This was back in the 60s. They called it the marshmallow experiment, where they got some children together and they put a marshmallow on the table, and they said basically, if you leave it for 15 minutes, we'll bring you lots more marshmallows. And the test was whether the children would, eat the marshmallow now, or wait for the 15 minutes, right? And there's been various sort of, there was one not so long ago in the UK, which was just an evolution of the same experiment. But I find that it's quite interesting. Do you satisfy yourself now? Or do you kind of trust that there's something better in the future coming? And I think they worked out reliability of the future state is important. So I look at those two. Are we in the business of trust or the business of growth? I mean, the markets will tell you they want trusted growth, right? Any CEO wants to build predictability of growth. And predictability means there's some trust there. There's a reliability there. I think it probably is the ongoing, always the biggest tension of any project is, how much do we invest to get revenue in a reasonable time frame, or growth in a reasonable time frame, versus, some future point. And we'll dig into lifetime value, I'm sure, a bit more, but how do you measure lifetime, right? What is lifetime? And most companies will probably tell you any model is a maximum 3-year model. That's not lifetime, is it? That's 3 years. So it's I think that's I think measurement is super important. What gets measured ultimately dominates. Right. I was last week with a customer. I was with the leadership of that customer, and what they want is results. They want very clear, concrete results, and we all have the same from our leaders, right? What are the results that you're getting, and the results can't be, well, we'll have nice loyal customers in 3 or 4 or 5 years time. So it's a balance. So
yeah, definitely. The difference between growing a business or developing one. I mean, being focused on short-term and financial KPIs, or starting with the purpose of a brand, of a business, and making sure that we are trusted not only now, but in the next generation. That's exactly what makes great brands great, right? And this is a challenge for small companies who have to pay their employees, every week, every month, but also for big corporate companies that go public, and then they have all the stakeholders and stockholders pushing them to grow.
It is, but I think it's reasonable to assume that you can have both, right? You can grow in the short term and the long term if you choose to set a strategy that is not trying to rip people off in the short term, but build sustainable growth with your customers that they come to rely on you, right? They come to trust you, they come to be loyal. All those things are important. So I think it is reasonable to do that. I'm lucky at SAS. We work for a private company, so actually we're not chasing the quarter results all the time, right? And that is a challenge for many big American companies, right, or big corporate companies. So we have some freedom to build relationships over the long term. So yeah.
And so it's so funny because in performance marketing, we are also shifting away, because of the zero-click phenomenon, because of the AI answered results. We are shifting away from a purely, how many leads have you generated? How many were sent to sales? How many closed? How many views? How many likes? To a, what is your overall sentiment whenever Gemini mentions your brand? Is it positive? How many times do you come up in AI answers? And this is also shifting from growth KPIs, I would say, to trust KPIs and visibility. Do you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I mean, and by the way, it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing we're not chasing clicks and those things anymore. I think, the challenge at the moment is how does a business reorientate itself from, it's measured those things year on year and month on month and week on week, and it's used those as indicators in its business of performance, of the ultimate outcome of revenue performance. So, at the moment, there's this kind of, just rewiring that has to take place where, people need to understand that market is drying, is changing, because consumers are now, to your point, going to use a summarized form of a search or the AI agent itself, and so having your content discoverable, having your content in the way, in the shape that the AI engine can interpret it is every marketing department is frantically trying to make, and our own marketing team in SaaS, a lot of the big enterprise customers will hide that content behind you signing up. So I'll let you have access, but you've got to sign up with your details. You're having to now make it discoverable in the first place. Yeah. So that's it's an interesting shift in the B2B markets as well. But yeah, ultimately, us all as consumers are not going to click through anymore. We're just going to read the summarized form, right? So.
That's definitely. I would like to come back to this subject later on in our conversation, but what we are already seeing is, AI agents obviously helping marketing teams and business people doing more things faster and probably as good as it was before, hoping that this is true. But we are also seeing that consumers, citizens, we are all adopting AI agents and they are acting on our behalf, searching, as we mentioned, deciding, even transacting. The customer relationship is no longer direct. And this is a scary future for business people like us. So how does trust evolve in this context? And are brands still building trust with people, or do we now need to be concerned with earning trust from AI agents acting on our behalf? And how can we do it?
Look, so my view is that shift to the indirect side was happening anyway, right? If you just sort of step back and sort of said, I used to talk to individuals directly or send content to their houses that they picked up, and then the world went digital, right? And we were sort of trying to connect your digital identity with your human identity, and we've spent huge kind of sums of money trying to kind of bring all these views of you together in a digital world. And then the kind of challenge of, how we've used that data, whether it's, third party, second party, first party, or even zero party data. So that's just been happening, right? As channels evolve, people have, gone to influencers on social that they trust more than the brand voice, right? And so that shift's happening. I think what you see now with an AI agent is just a further obfuscation, if you like, of the indirect nature. I come back to how do you build trust with an AI agent? I come up dry on that one. I step back and say you still have to understand the human behind that's using the agent, right? And I think the more that you do understand the human behavior, that you understand particularly the human behavior towards your market, your brand, that is enabling you to shape your products, your service, your customer experience to the market. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier. People will will go back to the brands they rely on, that they trust, that they find reliable. Now, the agent will just do some of the hard work. To your point, we are creatures of trying to. We don't want to click through.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? If you think we've gone through this digital era, and I see it with my children growing up. You've shown me your children growing up. We didn't have the internet, right? So we grew up with information availability in a certain way, going to libraries and reading books, right?
Encyclopedias.
Yeah, exactly. Then the kind of world exploded, and you got information everywhere, and then suddenly it's really hard to navigate all that information. So the AI agent is just helping us simplify that navigation experience, right? But ultimately, I think understanding how you show up there is important, which goes back to your question of the B2, how do brands make themselves discoverable by AI agents? But ultimately, you come back behind the scenes and say, well, your role now as marketing is to make sure there's a continued human emotion connection between your brand and the people, right? Because AI agents are just going to pull whatever they can read, and you're going to be in a battle to kind of make that discoverable. But, if you rely on your bank, if you rely on your retail businesses and they do good service, people are going to come back to you, right? That's the nature of humans. So it always makes me laugh. I shared with you when we met in Lisbon, that marketoonist example where you got the AI agents on the left-hand side saying it's going to make marketers much more engaging, and on the right-hand side, consumers are going to ignore more marketers. Right?
That Carson is great.
So true. It's so true. And whilst we just spoke there about the consumer side, as I shared with you, the impact on the automation for your technology or marketing technology, it's just incredible. I mean, we are talking, we're talking step change, which is 5 to 10 times the output with AI agents that you get pre-agents. So if you just, there aren't many things that give you a 10x kind of, like, whether that's efficiency or effectiveness. And that's what we're seeing with the capability. So it's just incredibly powerful, both sides, from the marketer out, but also, as you can see, from us as consumers, and simplifying information. So
thinking about the automation, it's obvious that probably the first automation use cases in software that were widespread among us marketers were email marketing automation. Tools like MailChimp, naturally HubSpot, and so many others. And I remember you said something last time we were together in Lisbon, which I found so funny. You said that sending emails is like taking drugs, and that's a strong analogy. So what exactly are companies addicted to? Volume, short-term metrics, illusion of activity? What do you think?
You raised it at the start. How many clicks am I getting? It makes me laugh. I mean, I think later, I think we were going to pick up on this point, but I'll raise it now. I still find it incredible that we celebrate 30% open rates and 10% click-through rates. And I look at that and go, well, that's 70% of people are ignoring you, right? And 90% aren't doing anything, right? And so, we've grown to accept these, phenomenally low rates of engagement, right? And emails sort of in the middle, right? You look at display, and you're talking of fractions of percentages, right? And so my philosophy is kind of the alternate. It's, well, how do we connect every communication to something tangible, or at least more communications are tangible than less. So flipping that 30% of people opening to 70%, right? For me, that's our what we see as our focus in the industry. If you make your targeting so powerful, there's no reason why you're not going to, lift your response rates. We had a great customer. One of my best references from a customer said, we grew our business by 50% and we sent 30% less communications. Right? So sending 30% less and growing 50% more. So that's kind of, and so I often say, it's funny, we go into this email drug sort of space. Our focus of conversation is, look, how many emails do you send out this year or last year? And, if it's 1 million, 10 million, a billion, because we have customers that send that much, I'm starting with, well, how do I half that number and give you a better response, right? And I think that is just our philosophy with where we come into the industry, looking to drive better targeting, and ultimately less but more powerful engagement. So,
and that's a very hard thing to get into, because we are all just hardwired to think that more is best, and more touch points and more visibility and engagement, or supposed engagement with people. And I heard recently, and it's a matter of relevance, not of repetition.
Yes,
it's relevance. I heard Seth Godin recently arguing that content is no longer a scarce asset. Of course, this is obvious, and it has become a commodity due to Gen AI. We can produce content at the press of a button, and so content and thought leadership content, it's no longer a source of differentiation. Okay, so competing, you were saying that competing in volume, competing on volume, frequency, or average quality, it doesn't make any strategic impact. It's just you have to do it because everybody's doing it. But the real shift comes from building content to building connection, in his words. I would say relevance, of course, connection, again, trust and real relationships. So from your perspective, Mike, how should companies rethink their content marketing strategies? What adaptations should we make to the old inbound playbook?
Well, I think content marketing is still it is just to that point I was making about the 10x increase. You can build it a lot easier and quicker, and then the discoverability of it is just changing with the nature of the way an AI agent works. I think ultimately, your content, your voice, your opinion goes back to, how you build that brand trust. If you were bouncing around trying to say too many things to too many different people, you'd be like, I don't, whereas that consistency, I think is hugely important. So, for me, a North Star of any business now is, well, how do I want my brand to be perceived? How do I want that experience to, and the brand, the perception of a brand is not just about what you're saying, it's about the experience around it. It's about the product qualities and all the things that you associate. So it's all those things coming together, which is why I think I guess picking up where I think Seth's coming from, or where we're coming from, is actually understanding those patterns of signals that bring together, someone's experience of service versus, the product experience they've had, or, when they've called in to us, or actually, when they've made a repeat purchase. I think bringing those signals together, from an intelligence point of view is the bit where the market is going to be. We talk about this from our side to say, we're moved from this digital, we talked about this information digital era, and you're moving into an intelligence era, right? And that's both on the consumer side with the way AI is going to interpret things for you, but it's also on the brand side, because the brands that are going to be more successful are the ones that are going to increase their learning rate. So they'll be able to understand, the signals in their business.
Right.
And these are the challenges. I think somewhere else we said these aren't linear anymore. These signals, right? These are multi-dimensional kind of things. And the reality is how do we connect and stitch together all those signals? But that's the power, right? Too many silos still exist in these companies. We need to break those down. We need to make sure that these decision systems are kind of understanding of all the different patterns that are happening. Because the compute power's there, the AI power's there, right? We need to unlock some of those things. And I think that bit, so content, understanding the voice and things, not so much the generation to your point, but then the signal, understanding the intelligence of interpreting signals is going to be huge. So
yeah, and this is something amazing, because everybody thinks about marketing automation as, of course, if this, then that. If a customer, looks at our pricing page, then put him in a nurturing workflow with the purpose of accelerating the buying process or something like that. Now we can understand that if this, then that is not just the name of the game. We can have agents doing that for ourselves. But the other part is that what we see the market and marketers doing is thinking of automation of content alone. Again, going back to Gen AI, the Gen AI possibilities of increasing productivity for, how many newsletters can I do today, or blog posts, whatever. But you're touching upon something that we've had for so many years, which is machine learning algorithms that help us cluster behavior patterns and respond to them with things like next best action, next best offer. We've had this for so many years now. Predictive AI, not just generative AI. And I think that we are missing this, which is probably the greatest opportunity for us in bringing AI to our companies, not just generative AI, not just if this, if then workflows, but also all these predictive abilities that we've had for so long.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we sort of, the market sort of has got hot on AI because it's seen, a generative AI, and consumers can sort of understand it because they can sort of see what's happening in a search agent, or, and I think that's sort of, in some people's mind, that sort of narrowed the perception of, but that's sort of one branch of it. But you're right, the discipline of AI has been around for some time. The main challenge that we've seen is because you're right, you're absolutely right. Companies have been already benefiting from these technologies for some time. The key challenge has been the scale of those things, because what has tended to happen is, you think about the whole concept of AI targeting, we're making things smaller, right? We're not we're not blasting the same message out as everyone. We're ultimately getting to a one-to-one, people talk about the pursuit of one-to-one personalization, right? Where everyone's getting bespoke content and a bespoke message and potentially bespoke pricing and all those things, right? And the systems have been struggling to keep up, and so what you've seen in sort of the whole hyper personalization market, and there's a load of articles, it gets you so far, but then there's been no ability to scale. And so a lot of our customers are still struggling. Their main kind of challenges are just purely efficiency things. There's too many handovers. There's too many handovers between teams. So you think about the business teams trying to create ideas, then you've got data teams trying to analyze customers, and then you've got operations teams, you've got content teams, you've got channel teams. And then, you go into some of the regulated space, you've got compliance teams that and so it's the handovers of all those things that slow you down. And then they kind of stop you getting so much of your hyper personalization. I had a big retailer in the US that were, they've got sort of 7 product categories on, jewelry, apparel, home, those kind of things, right? Department type store, and ultimately underneath those main categories, they've got lots of subcategories, but they can only get to personalization at the category level. Where they want to get to is personalization at the subcategory level, and then then you sort of think, so you get these exponential need for customer journeys, for AI and modeling, and I think that's the bit that's been holding the industries back, because no one's getting an army of people to come in and help you build those. It's the same people, trying to do more. And that's where we've seen, I think, really for me, the really heavy lift of the AI side on the vendor side, just to take away a lot of that manual intervention. I mean, we're working now. I sort of challenged our team and said, look, I think the tool should be able to do everything from a marketing brief. The marketing brief should define what the campaign is for. What are my goals? What am I trying to sell? What are the the revenue and it should be able to map out all of the things that we go through, all the steps. And I would say we're quite far down that journey now of saying, right, the brief should do it all. All these handovers should go away. I was with a bank last week that said that their supply chain from the business to their output was 8 weeks. I said, right, we need to target that as 2 weeks, right? I mean, that's the reality we should be. And AI will get you there. And I'm fairly confident that the handovers and things will get. So what that means is suddenly we are going to unlock a lot more hyper personalization. I think you're going to see the promise of personalization just get a lot better, because the content can be easily generated, the journeys can be easily mapped, the modeling can be scaled, and those are the things I think that increase your learning rate. But ultimately the system sort of becomes intelligent to do those things. And it was funny, we built a future state. What do we think our software looks like in I think it was like 5 years we were debating, and effectively it's just a dashboard, right, with just some which is telling you where your constraints are, where if you spent more budget you would get more return, and ultimately the system is self-optimizing around those goals for you. All of the handovers, so it's a fascinating time for change and potential. So sorry.
That's a vision close to, and correct me if I'm wrong, close to what we would expect from marketing mix modeling, but with the decision part integrated there, or the semi-autonomous decision part.
The CRM component of that, so whereas the marketing mix is that sort of esoteric kind of, how am I shaping my spend, for the year, for whatever. This is the sort of micromanagement of CRM decisions, where customers are coming to your web or coming into your mobile, or and how does how you prompt customers through your outbound kind of activity match when they come to you, and how do those things synchronize between them? So that for me is what we call decision intelligence. So
that's very interesting. And all these features from AI and all these predictive AI use cases, again, we've seen them work for many years now, and mainly in companies that have enough data and enough budget to invest on this. I want to get in detail about this topic later on our conversation. But how do you see that an SMB company, how can an SMB company get inside this predictive AI world that has been around for so many times? I mean, we work every day with vendors that deliver CRM automation, some sort of intelligence and business BI to SMBs, but we are not seeing these software vendors touching on these use cases, and I think it's a waste of opportunity.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because we think it's a waste of opportunity as well, and we're about to release a new product, I think, that fits and covers this really well. Let me say, so here's where I see the options are in the market today, right? So if you want to go and build good AI models for things like propensity to buy or cross-sell, or even looking at things like elapsed spend, churn, those kind of areas, or lifetime value, those kind of measures, you're typically kind of in any enterprise, you're going to either leverage or employ your own data science kind of resource, or you're going to buy an agency that is bringing those kind of skills to you, right? And so it's a very human-centric form, whether you're doing in-house or using an agency, and you've got those humans kind of producing those models, and the challenge for marketing is that process in itself is quite a long time, and it makes sense in sort of things like where you're evaluating fraud or risk or big decisions, right? In marketing, it doesn't need to be the sort of perfect decision. You just need to have 95% of the people would do this, right? So what kind of happened is that the vendors then went all the other end, and they created AI models in their software as a service applications, and effectively they became what you describe as black box. So you kind of get an output of the model, but you don't understand how it came to those criteria. And then what you would see is if a software as a service platform was just, for example, looking at web data, it would build the model just on clickstream data, but that might not be representative of human behavior, because guess what? Web is part of my, clickstream data is part of what you see about me, not everything. So I think, you had those two extremes, and, we most times what we see is customers are taking months to build just simple models, and reliant on that. And that data science is expensive. It's it's hard to maintain, and for your SMB question, it becomes out of reach, right? And yet they don't want to use these sort of AI black box models, because they sort of I know enough about my data and AI to think I need to understand how it's making a decision, because so we've kind of come up with an approach that's sort of in between the two. It's very, very innovative, and we're just literally coming to market now with this product this year. We have some early adopters, and effectively what we're trying to do is automate all of the data science heavy lift work, which is the underlying creation of the data for modeling. And so we've managed to automate that in a way where someone who is more, I guess, more comfortable in data science can build what we call a recipe, but then business users can now democratize and build multiple versions of this model. And so what we're seeing is like a normal cross-sell model for, might take somewhere between 3 and 5 months for an enterprise business. We're doing it in 2 weeks. But we're not trying to emulate the data science person. What I'm trying to do is give you close to a data science result in a fraction of the time. And if you want your data science team to then go in and you've got those people that want to understand how the model is created, what the data it used, etc., you can do all that. So it's not black box. So it's kind of, it's playing halfway house. And we're really excited because I think that in the SMB space is going to suddenly unlock capability. So you don't need the data science skills. You do need data people, I would say, but you can use agency or external resources. But ultimately, we're just trying to make the process sort of somewhere between a data science and not a black box. So we've got customers that are trialing it at the moment, and they're doing it in tandem with a data science team. And our results are pretty close to the data science, and it's taken us like 2 weeks. So it's called Marketing AI, SaaS Marketing AI. So we're going to be releasing that in July. But yeah, I'd love to share the demos with the team. Love to get some clients in Portugal.
Wow, that's exciting, because we are used to think of, these use cases, as you said, in a data science pipeline, typical long implementation cycles, large platforms, a significant investment in people and in tools. We're thinking mainly in the category of CDP, customer data platform, that many times solves for these issues. And it's a hot topic also here in Portugal, because companies are trying to figure out, where does my CRM is great enough, and when should we bring to our MarTech stack something more like a CDP? So, and many mid-sized companies are making these calculations right now. You mentioned a case last time we were together of an SMB company in Holland that completely breaks away from that model, like you were saying. What was deliberately ignored? I mean, I can see the innovative part of your solution at SaaS, but besides that, was anything deliberately ignored, simplified, in order to deliver that value faster?
No, this is just about. I guess it's just the nature of us making our enterprise software more composable, and leveraging the capabilities of not just cloud and software. As I said, we have quite a unique model where our philosophy is not to build a data model in our tool and not to copy data into our tool. So we focus on integrating to the data wherever it resides at source. But what we're trying to do is, just simplify the generation, whether it's of journeys or whether it's of AI capabilities or decision capabilities. And in essence, then just push that back. So let me be practical with this. When you sign a contract with SaaS, we can have an environment up within an hour. So our environment comes up within an hour. You can map your data to it in 5 steps. So within 2 or 3 hours, you can have an environment with those things mapped. Now, the power of these agents becomes super important, because suddenly, I want to build a customer journey out. I just now upload a diagram of what I want to do, and the tool starts configuring it on its own. As we kind of go to the back end of this year, we're going to have an AI agent that will just tell you'll be able to type to it and say, tell me who the people I need to target for this campaign. And it will go away and it will look at your data, and assuming that your foundations are there, then it will run really quickly. So just the speed of going from a starting project to campaign. So this one example that I mentioned was 6 weeks from contract to their first live email campaign. So suddenly, barrier to entry, I think for SMB has significantly changed. Now, I'm not sort of saying, you have to still get your data foundation right. And we have, in this case, in Holland, we had a partner that provided a managed data service alongside our application. So, as we know, the application in this space will only ever be as good as the data that you're feeding into it. So, but there are so many powerful ways now to get the data right. It's not difficult to get clickstream data. It's not difficult to create email response data back from your campaigns. And that is, your greatest source of opportunity is to understand, who's clicking through and why, and, how do I then go and understand and tailor my campaigns so that I get more people engaged.
Oh, here he goes. It touched I believe, the most important point in our age of AI, because we see companies rushing to adopt the latest generative AI tools or whatever AI comes as part of the brand, while overlooking what actually creates differentiation, which is their unique customer data. Given that AI is increasingly becoming commoditized, to what extent do you believe competitive advantage is shifting away from tools towards data readiness?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is the software as a service industry, and I was reading some stuff from Scott Brinker actually on this topic. The software as a service industry, to run, it had to create these sort of interpretations of data to scale. So every of these big vendor solutions sort of had a data model within it, and then what in a project a customer would have to map their data into this software as a service application data model, and then everything works beautifully. But what that typically did was it ignored a lot of the cool stuff in the customer's data, right? So where now application building for AI apps is coming in is customers or clients now are seeing, well, I can build an agent directly on my own data. So what's all this software as a service stuff now, right? And Scott describes those platforms becoming more infrastructure, which I agree with. And I think from our side, we've always focused on the infrastructure of being able to connect to the data, being able to use all of the data available, because guess what? That's what AI companies want, more data, right? That's, they don't want to squeeze data down, they want everything. So getting that balance of how we can, access everything, but, interpret what's needed. And then when you get into runtime, because you don't have to get your data right all up front, when you work out, because marketers are always like, right, I've got a new campaign, new things, I want to try this new data, I want to bring that in. In the past, that was really hard, right? I knew, certainly you go to regulated markets again, I've banks that would tell me that it takes them 12 months to get a new data variable into their source systems for marketing. 12 months, it's like crazy, right? Whereas that speed now is we can adjust on the fly. I mean, we can literally drag and drop new variables into our tool for either AI, for targeting, for journey building. So yeah, I data readiness becomes foundation. The intelligence of your data is where the differentiation is, right? So data readiness is one thing. If you can't interpret it into understanding what those patterns are in your data, then almost then, and I think that's the bit I think which is exciting. How you build strategies to better use information that in the past, how many execs would tell you I really struggle to get basic questions answered. Well, how about I just give you an agent that you can ask the questions to now, and it just looks at your data. That's where we're going. So
yeah, great. So this is a call out for every business leader. Please first solve for fragmented, low quality, disconnected data, customer data, which is the most important.
And what I would say is don't invest. There are applications that can help with that piece itself, right? So so give an example. So your data might have missing fields and things. We can manage that. The tooling can manage that. If your data's not big enough, representative enough, we can generate data, right? You can generate synthetic data to actually look like what. So again, these kind of barriers of data readiness become solvable through applications as well. And, we're getting, again, that's really exciting because, I don't need to worry about personal PII anymore, right? I can just take a snapshot of your data and just create, and I can tell you, I'll give you a model that will be pretty darn accurate for marketers. So
this is gold. What you've just said, it's gold. And makes a huge difference when we think about these projects and when we want to compete using data, AI, and all these tools, not just with the scarcity mindset, as Scott and friends Ray Mesmer mentioned. I believe we've read that paper. That scarcity mindset that puts us on an optimization and reducing, costs, but competing on a abundance mindset. I mean, differentiation, innovation, customer relationships.
Oh yeah, today the kind of, I would describe the market is, towards that scarcity mindset is kind of how do I do more with the resources I've got? And I think what you'll see is that shift to, well, let's automate the tasks, the core things that make you inefficient, and then let's reuse that human capital into thinking, well, what's that abundance mindset look like? How do I do more with more? So actually, we have our major conference next week in Dallas, and for my customers, I'm saying exactly that. I'm saying, look, I don't have all the answers here, because part of this is you rethinking how your teams are going to operate when I collapse the barriers between those handoffs, right? But ultimately, what I hope we'll be doing is we'll be stepping back and saying, right, let's automate the scarcity stuff so that you get the stuff that's on your queue out the door, and then you can get on the front foot of your business and start saying, right, let's look at how we strategically grow our customer base this year, next year. How much of it is already, we have the customers that we're expanding, how much of it do we need to acquire new? Those are the strategic questions, not, how do I get my campaign out the door next week, to sell this new product I'm launching. It should be how am I growing my customer base over the next 2 to 3 years, and what are the kind of strategic things that we need to build to that. That's a major shift.
SaaS solution is called Customer Intelligence 360. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
You've been talking about that, and now it changes all of this. Where do you see, in a real world stack with CRM, automation tools, data warehouse, probably ERPs, multiple channels, where do you see SaaS solution bringing more value? Centralizing decision, centralizing data, or orchestrating, customer touch points and activations?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is decisioning and decision intelligence, right? I would argue between your data layers, and you see plenty of examples of this, between your data layers, between your application or your activation layers, there's got to be some sort of central decisioning, some sort of brain. And reality is, some people kind of get caught up. Do I need one big brain? No, you need lots of types of brains for different types of workload. But that sort of central piece of a brain, I would describe ourselves at. Look, we have, when I go back to I look after that CI 360 component, which is exactly that what we call the middle matters. The middle matters is the bit that connects your data to your applications, your activations, and your customer experiences, because that's the bits companies struggle with, right? Now we do have activation capabilities. We have, we're a full-scale email service provider. We have mobile, web, social. We have, all of the activation platform. But I'm not trying to monetize that. I'm not trying to come and be your email provider and grow an email business. As I said to you earlier, I want to come in and help you send less emails and get more value. So that's our philosophy. Actually, it's being that decision intelligence layer. We're very comfortable. I mean, as you go down to the SMB space, there are lots of advantages of using us across both, because again, simple things like, if you use our email engine, it's integrated directly to the decision intelligence. So as soon as a customer clicks or opens or does something in your communication, it's in our decision intelligence straight away. There's no data lag coming back in. So there's some benefits, but many of our big enterprise customers are using us in a composable form. So they'll use us as the brain, the decision intelligence, doing the heavy lift of segmentation, of propensity, of all those things, and then feeding us into application stacks that just send content, emails, web, etc. So I would, my focus as a business is on decision intelligence. So
Right. So in spite of everything that you've just mentioned, I believe it's important to send a message that we should not underestimate the complexity of data and integration, right? So how can we balance this new world of possibilities, but keeping in mind that we don't want to make mistakes? And what are the most common mistakes you see companies when they're trying to implement this vision?
Look, it's a lot better than it's ever been. So I wouldn't be telling you anything that most of these projects have not found out. Siloed data probably is one of your core challenges, and some of those silos in data are formed because of potential risk that data is going to be misused, right? And I think you've got there are good reasons for that, right? And you look at the markets trying to manage risk of data and consumer data, particularly in Europe, right? Leading a lot of those things. So they create those inherent risks, and so they sort of put these walls in your data. So I think that's something that the industry has to overcome. I do believe that you can produce enough positive and manage your negative experiences in a better way. I mean, a lot of those negative experiences come from people using third-party data or incorrectly captured data, right? Whereas if you build good practices where customers actually want to give you their own data, zero-party data, I think you can manage those. But the data silos is there. That's that's the challenge. Probably the bigger challenge before that is just change management, basic stuff, change management, alignment to the strategy. Are those things articulated well? A lot of clients, we've been doing this for 25 years in this kind of marketing automation, direct marketing space. We still have a lot of customers that say to us, we just want to migrate from your old platform to your new platform. And, we just want a cost of migration. I'm going, well, hold on a minute. No, you need to rethink all of those old campaigns, because are they still relevant? And, do you not want to rethink how you're communicating and what that new experience you want to create is, or do you want to perpetuate how you've done for the last? And some of that goes back to, well, I just need to have my week on week, month on month, year on year reporting intact. But the brave companies that I've worked with will say, no, I understand, if I make this shift, I'm not going to be able to tell you that this year is better or worse than last year because I've changed the measures. Right. And that requires a lot of, thought leadership, people leadership. So I think if you sort of step back and say, well, look, getting that 3-year, 5-year, whatever your time frame is, and saying, get that clear, what you're trying to do, understand where your data silos are. Right. It doesn't mean you can't, you can't get things going. As I said to you, you can change your data in platforms like ours as your systems. You're not caught up in what you build now against the data you have now. So I think you can anticipate these things better. The final thing I'd say is, some of the challenges is ownership. Too often you see this sort of fragmented ownership between IT, data teams. Even if you go into marketing, I could probably tell you 7 different teams that touch my software. And so you get this sort of fragmented ownership piece, but particularly between the sort of business, the data teams and IT. I've seen plenty of customers get frustrated and caught up there, but equally I've seen some really good projects emerge, and almost entire. I tell you, the thing I would say, that the thing that comes back to me that is a common denominator of the good projects is the relationship between the business and the data leadership is strong. When those two things are strong, and a lot of, my view, a lot of CIOs these days are much more business, friendly, as opposed to sort of building stuff and throwing that over the fence.
Exactly.
So
that makes all the difference. As a final thought, if you had to advise, a CEO today, obviously with limited time and resources, and again thinking of the SMB market, which is the majority of our companies, how can a CEO like this prepare for the next 12 months, 3 years? What they should prioritize first? Trust, we've mentioned that. Data foundations, adopting AI, anything else? What is the cost of getting this sequence wrong? Because maybe there's a sequence here, or not. What do you think?
Well, I think, I would, any senior leader, really, what I'm looking for them to do is give the longer term direction, right? And I think if you forget the short term stuff for the minute, but the market in the next 3 years is going to continue to evolve at pace. That there's going to be an exponential rise in the way people use agents, right? And what I would be sort of saying to you is, look, that's going to happen. You can't change that. Yeah. So I think what you need to do is say, well, how do I want my brand to be known in the market? What's the emotional connection that we stand for? Yeah. And sort of create that North Star. Honestly, Thiago, that's no different to having a North Star for your business, right? Is, how does your business touch your customers? What do you want them to feel, to experience? And, importantly, then that becomes the way that you show up, and that's whether you're showing up in an AI engine, or you're showing up in some digital communications, or you're showing up when the customer's coming into your call center to complain, right? I think for me, get that tone, right? And lead by example, and say that because what people want, I believe, is that, you said it up front to me, that they want reliability of what they're going to get from you. And I think the companies that are going to sustain themselves in the long term are going to be reliable and consistent in how they do it. And ultimately, you may not get everything right. You might give me a bad experience, but if you acknowledge it and, you come back and say that I'm going to fix it, then I think people go back. So, I think that becomes a mindset, right? AI is just part of it. You've just got to become AI literate. And you need to understand that, to your point, AI is not just about Gen AI. AI is not just about chat agents. AI, there is, I love it now. I tell to my kids, there's, in the UK market, there's loads of great, online learning to become literate in AI. SAS actually provides support into these things as well for governments. But you've just got to deal with an AI literate. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is get your executive team AI literate. Understanding what it is. The big bank, the big companies, the big banks are sort of doing this now. They're taking their leadership teams through this AI literacy. So that becomes important. And then, you sort of then bring it back to say, okay, so I know that AI is going to be a part of my future, right? And so now how you want to shape your AI is the piece, right? And then that comes back to data foundations about your strategies. And honestly, CRM is probably, or customer experience is probably a place where you can go and try stuff and get a lot of return, right? Not, you can get a lot of value for your business because you're going to get value from understanding the way customers are changing. You're going to get value from, actually, if I can just be better targeted, I can show up more consistently. You're going to get value from AI being able to make you more efficient, which generates more revenue for you. So there's sort of no downside to me. It's just, and frankly, as I've said on the call, your access to AI is just going to continue to democratize. So I think North Star, come back to it, get a North Star, confront it. Don't, there's no point in being scared of AI. I just think it's no, I think there is a lot of people that are concerned, quite rightfully concerned, but human behavior will resolve those things, right? It will put guardrails in place. It will kind of, those things are going to happen, right? So you sort of have to worry less about them. You just sort of know that, don't do anything stupid, clearly, don't misuse data. But again, most companies kind of understand the foundations are there, right? Now let's build the positive sides of the benefits of AI. Let's build an understanding that AI is not going to replace human roles. It's going to change our roles, right? And let's embrace what those changes are. In the same way, 5 billion years ago, farming changed the way that humans evolved, right? AI is just going to be the latest generation of
that's a good comparison.
Automation. So
undoubtedly, and these are so precious insights, Mike. Maybe to summarize it, what that sentence, it nails it. When the middle works, marketing, I would say business works. Whether the middle is data, is trust, is the human on the loop, and
it's funny. Do you know? It is funny. The data industry's got a bit of a reputation of being sort of down in the weeds a little bit, and a little bit scientific and a little bit complex because we do like to make the world complex, right? And acronyms and technologies and
guilty.
But it is. But actually, when you think about it, it's just understanding patterns. Understanding patterns in your business and giving you indicators of what's happening. And I think if you kind of come back and say that, the teams need to kind of confront the grubbiness, if you like. Trying to find a better way to explain it, but the sort of roll your sleeves up engine room type side of data, alongside kind of all of the business and what shows externally. I think that those two will naturally just come closer together. It's just, it's great. It's such a great industry to be in, and it's exciting, the change throughout. Now, I've never been more excited in the 20 years I've been doing this to say, wow, next 3 years is just going to be just incredible opportunity.
Brace yourselves.
Brace yourself, face it. Just get good people that can talk to you about this stuff. Us, let's just kind of confront some of these topics, and it's just all upside to me, and that's the positivity on my side.
Perfect. So it's a nice note to end this. Mike, thank you so much. It was perfect and a delight to me to have this conversation. Thank you so much for your energy and your vision. It was great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tiago.
This was the 11th edition of Liminal's MarTech Talks podcast. Liminal is the first Portuguese company specialized in strategic consulting and MarTech operations. We have been able to raise the marketing and sales performance of several brands through marketing strategies and technologies such as CRM, automation, AI, and BI. In these MarTech Talks, we will continue to bring you the interviews with those who are at the forefront of the digital transformation of marketing and sales departments so that your business can also grow in this new technological era.